listen, they're going to fight. They've been planning this for a long time. And what I want to say to people is, hey, listen, if it's going to be something that is in the interest of the world and interest of the United States of America, and we're going to go to war, it's not going to be just the Iranians. I said this earlier, that the Chinese have publicly stated in no uncertain terms that they will side with Iran, even if it means World War III. They said that on Chinese television. It's on my site.
Well, they said it about, exactly, they said it about Pakistan, too. I mean, this is really making the war lines draw, and we're all run by hedge fund managers like Corzine, who makes 40-to-1 bets with other people's money. I mean, these guys are in control, but I think they are irrationally exuberant. I think they are clinically insane.
Well, listen, I think it's the supposedly of the 7 deadly sins, the sin of pride is the worst and the most destructive. Why? Because when you're prideful and when you think that you're invincible, boy, you're setting yourself up to be knocked off that fine white Charger, and you're setting yourself up to get a big pie in the face. And our economy is fragile at best. I mean, if nothing else happened from here on out, maybe we could grow our way out of it, but I don't think we can.
And that's why all the military top generals in the U.S. and Israel and England are saying, don't do it, but they're going ahead with it. Why are all the generals, except for one guy they found, Dempsey now, and the former head of the Israeli military, the former Mossad head, who they had to get rid of because they're not for this? Why, from your research, I know you've covered this a lot, why are they telling them don't do it? Why are they calling it a catastrophe?
They know it's going to be a mess. I mean, Alex, how long can Americans stand $8 or $10 or $12 oil in fuel lines like we had in the 70s? You know, in the 70s, we had a really strong country. We didn't have but a $500 billion deficit maybe in the 70s, $300 billion in the 70s. We could take a hit. In the 90s, we could take a hit. We're not set up to take a hit. When we had this massive bailout where the Federal Reserve, which incidentally didn't get hardly any coverage, the Government Accountability Office nailed $16.2 trillion that got pumped out to bail out domestic and foreign banks, domestic and foreign companies. Who knows how much got paid back? They say most of it's been paid back, define most. And we can't audit the Fed, so who knows what happened? Who do they pick as a winner and who do they pick as a loser? Evidently, they picked MF Global as a loser. But anyway, the long and short of it is the generals know that this is a giant mess. This is not going to be like, Force A and Force B meeting each other on the battlefield. Oh, no. This is going to be asymmetrical warfare. This is going to be, Hezbollah is going to be turned loose in the north, which is, I think, part of the reason why they want to knock out Syria. Hamas is going to be turned loose in the south. Israel is going to be under, major attack. The other thing is, and I was thinking about this, is that at this point, if Israel does, and I think they do, it's been widely reported they have 200 to 300 nuclear weapons. Well, then we can't let Israel fall into the hands of Hamas or Hezbollah now, can we? They can't get a hold. They can't be overrun. If they are overrun, then who gets control of the 200 or 300 nuclear weapons that Israel reportedly possesses? Well, we're kind of stuck there.
No, the elite are causing a giant crisis, exactly as you said, to distract from the economic implosion, which is actually a mega bank takeover.
I think they're going to have the implosion anyway. I think they know mathematically at this point we might as well print money. We're going to have the implosion. Let's buy time as long as we can to prepare. That's what I think. And other people say the same thing. I mean, we never fixed, this whole...
No, the military's all being told get ready for civil unrest. How do you add to the equation 1.5 million instant checks, average 2.1 guns bought? That's over 3 million guns, an all-time record sold in the month of December. And that's just through registered gun shops, not just the private seller market, a reseller market. And they did a survey I saw where the number one reason they're buying guns is fear of unrest, collapse, and not trusting the government. I mean, what message is that to these banksters that run the government, that the public just bought 3 million guns in 1 month because they don't trust you?
Well, I think the military is not going to all line up and get on board with this. I just don't see everybody in the military saying, yeah, this is okay. We'd like to have a military government. I mean, listen, our military has grown up under the flag of the United States and the U.S. Constitution. I think the overwhelming majority of the people in the military believe in civil rights and believe in the U.S. Constitution. That's why they go to war and they die. And I was saying this at CNN, and I think it made people mad. And I said, hey, in this whole, Iran-Iraq conflict, Afghanistan, Freudian slip, Afghanistan and Iraq conflict, that the only people are suffering are military service people and their families. Everybody else is out drinking their lattes and having a good time and getting bailouts, and the only people that are coming home with their limbs torn off and people coming home in boxes at Dover are the people in the military. And listen, one thing I got to say is that if this is such a national security, such national security importance, then I think everybody should sacrifice. We should have a tax. We should have the draft. I think Charlie Rangel was right to say, hey, we should have a draft. We shouldn't be paying contractors $150,000. Incidentally, we took all of our troops out of Iraq, supposedly, but yet I think the number is something in the neighborhood of 70,000 contractors left behind. Are we really out of Iraq? We just up and left? I don't think so.
Let me ask you this question, and then I want to go to some calls.
Okay.
The ruling class acts like they're not worried about anything anymore. I mean, as you know, 20-something years ago, they wouldn't let the troops use depleted uranium. Now they just tell them, don't worry about it, it's good for you. They tell the TSA workers...
I did a big thing on that. I did a big thing on that.
Well, that's why I brought it up to you. Yeah, I saw it. But I mean, here they are now telling TSA workers, I've had TSA people tell me, there's no radiation, it's not bad for me. And then I see all these top scientists in the news saying it's bad, the body scanners. So I'm just saying the level of deception, even for the minions that are in the system, what do you think's going on? Go ahead.
I think they're getting. Listen, this is like a big ship, and you don't take and turn a big ship like a motorboat. And I think the changes coming to America are going to be vast. And of course, the status quo wants to hang on to power, and they don't really want to fix anything. And this is why. Let's come right back around to Ron Paul. Listen. They sold liar loans. Okay, now, people like Rush Limbaugh. I listened to him on the air the other day, and I think he's an intensely, wonderfully intelligent man. And for him to come up with what he's saying is absolutely, outrageous and repugnant for a man of his intelligence to say, "Well, the government made all these bankers, make these loans." The best frauds were a nugget of truth surrounded by a big load of crap. And yes, maybe the government did want bankers to have poor people to have more access to capital, but they didn't tell them to have liar loans. They didn't tell them to take those liar loans, which were fraudulent, and package them up into securities. Oh, and they didn't have the paperwork, so they lost them according to the robo-signing where they were manufacturing the promissory note. You think you pay for your house in 30 years. You do not. You pay for your house.
Well, sure, it was the mega banks on record that lobbied government to make those changes and create that big auction market.
Yeah, but they couldn't lobby fraud. When you package securities up, you got to have the promissory notes in the securities.
No, I understand. The buck stops with the banks and the people certifying those loans.
We have massive, giant fraud that happened to Americans. It was so big they changed the accounting rules in 2009, and they're still changed. And that the Financial Accounting Standards Board, FASB, said you can value assets, real estate, mortgage-backed securities, at whatever value you think they'll be in the future. Now, the IRS does not do that. Oh, you want to pay off this loan with your house? Oh, you want me to value it in the year 2040? No. What's the value today? It's called mark-to-market accounting. And if they did mark-to-market accounting, see, I suspect all the big banks are insolvent. And here, prove me wrong. Go back to mark-to-market accounting. Value the stuff on your books. And I think that if it's such a big problem that they can't print enough money to hand out to the banks, and incidentally, they handed out nearly $200 billion in forgiveness and money through Fannie and Freddie just to one bank, Bank of America, last year.
Amazing. Let's jam in a call right now. It's just total insanity. Hyperinflation on the way. George in Pennsylvania, you're on with our guests. You got any comments or questions?
3 quick ones, and I'll listen off air. One of them was that I had talked with you before about having people that were voting in New Hampshire register with someplace that they were voting for Ron Paul, so we can avoid this issue. At least have some people that are willing to say, yes, I will stand up in court and say that I voted for him, just so we can take some of these fraudsters to court. The other real quick one, 14th Amendment says if the loans are made in the government's name, the government is not responsible for them. I think that this has all been fraudulent. I think the 14th Amendment protects us. I think we can throw all this stuff out.
Yeah, that's right. We've been signed on to these derivatives that we don't owe.
It's correct. You're correct, sir. So the answer is yes, you're correct.
One other thing is that all the lack of support, I think, is partially our fault. We haven't gotten out there and gotten the information out. I've been handing out your information and other people's information as much as I can. I think we need to have a political action committee to try to defend all these things that Ron.
I'll tell you what, that's a good point. We're going to break, Greg, but start answering it now. What are ideas to try to stop election fraud from your research?
Well, why are we having election fraud? The reason why is we have two corporate candidates, which is Romney and Obama. Okay, period. Even staunch Obama supporters say, "Hey, he's Wall Street's man," right? Even Michael Moore is been saying negative things.
Stay there. Let's finish on the other side. To finish that point, we'll be right back. Couple notes here. Don't forget, I'll be back tonight with the nightly news, 7 o'clock. We have the author of Dr. Mary's Monkeys that breaks down the government's development and the documents of cancer viruses as a weapon, fast-acting cancer. He'll be joining us. We'll cover a lot of the news we didn't get to in some of the breaking news. Also, it's out of print, and I told Charlotte Isbury, okay, well, don't put out the phone book size. We'll put out another abridged and updated, deliberate dumbing down, how the globalists have dumbed down education by design. It's out. It's available. She's joining us tomorrow. The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, revised and abridged, available at Infowars.com. Still a very thick book full of documents and a noble lie, Oklahoma City, proving that was a false flag attack, conclusively available at Infowars.com as well. This stuff is a stake to a vampire's heart, both these pieces of information warfare material. Going back to our guest, Greg Hunter of USAWatchdog.com. Greg, what are some of your ideas to counter election fraud?
Well, first of all, you're up against, people like you and I are up against a big, big mountain, but the mountain is shrinking and our mountain is rising. That's the good news. The bad news is President Obama goes on 60 Minutes at the beginning of December in front of Steve Croft and says, well, the banks did unethical things, but they didn't do anything illegal. Of course, Steve Croft, who makes $5 or $6 million a year in the mainstream media, didn't ask, hey, well, exactly what unethical things did they do? And listen, according to William Black, who's a former, regulator, banking regulator, and a professor of economics and law, says they packaged liar loans, they sold liar loans, they packaged them in securities, they got a tax exemption, they rated these securities many times without any paperwork, and then they created the paperwork and foreclosure fraud, and there's fraud, and nothing's been done wrong. It's a huge, massive problem. In the wake of the savings and loan crisis, they basically successfully convicted 1,000 financial elites. They gave out 10,000 indictments. Do you know how many people have been indicted and convicted in the wake of this crisis? Zero. None.
No, it's a green light to take money. Look at MF Global now, and we've got cases of Bank of America and others taking houses, not only where they don't own it or have the deed, but the house is paid for in cash for a decade. I mean, and this is getting to the point of just mega criminality.
Yes, and Eric, where's Eric Holder? And you know what? I don't want to be against the Democrats, because there is not a dime's worth of difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. Obama's a corporate candidate, and some of his far left supporters are like, hey, even Rachel Maddow came out against Obama for citing the NDAA. Listen, she understands what's going on. Whether you like her politics or not, she gets what's going on. Anybody that does journalism, wants a fair shake and be able to speak their mind. And this NDAA is a slippery slope. Yes, I know they say it's Al-Qaeda, but the president has an exemption. And many scholars and many people, including Ron Paul and others, have said, hey, this is the beginning of martial law here in America. So we have a giant uphill battle. And the elections fraud exists because there is not a free and independent media. We have not a free and independent media.
Well said. We're out of time. Greg Hunter, amazing. You've got a lot of energy and got a lot of great reports there at your site. You really cut through the clutter. Thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thanks for having me on.
You bet. I got to a lot of calls today, folks, and I would go into overdrive and take more, but I've got to kind of keep my strength to be able to do the nightly news tonight, because I did crack my sternum in a weightlifting accident, as you know, last weekend, and now it's healing and getting excruciatingly painful to even breathe or talk. But I will be back tomorrow, because I'm sure not going to lay in bed going through this pain. And I'm not going to have surgery, and I'm not going to wrap my chest or any of that. But pray for its speedy recovery, though, because it is getting worse and worse. But that's it for this transmission. Get our video about the NDAA being a hoax at Infowars.com and get it out to everyone.